Hello and welcome to another episode of Speak, Film, and Enter, a podcast where we review and rank movies. I'm Nate.
And I'm Dylan.
And I'm Adam.
And today, for the YouTube audience at least, we have our very first episode of What Makes It Great, where we take an old movie that the three of us have already seen and we've all agreed that we love and think is fantastic. Kind of the baseline rule is between the three of us, it has to average out to at least a 4.5 out of 5. We have to pretty much across the board think that this is a borderline, if not a masterpiece. And for this version of What Makes It Great, we have chosen the Studio Ghibli classic Princess Mononoke, because this month it is the 25th anniversary of that movie. So it's been playing in a few theaters around the US, is playing locally here in the Twin Cities for about a week or so. It might still be out there. I haven't checked, but I doubt it. I felt like kind of a 1 week special sort of thing, but I would have liked to get to that in theaters, but I didn't find the time, unfortunately. But
yeah, me too. That would have been fun.
Yeah, I've never seen a Ghibli movie on a big screen before, and just with how visually stunning their movies are, I really feel like I should get to one at some point. But Adam, if people are unfamiliar with what Princess Mononoke is, would you like to tell them what it's about?
Yes. On a journey to find the cure for a Tatarigami curse, sorry if I'm going to murder that, Ashitaka finds himself in the middle of a war between the forest gods and Tatara, a mining colony. In this quest, he also meets San, the Mononoke Hime. So,
yeah, there's a lot going on with this movie. And I mean, I guess one thing that I wanted to kind of get out there right away was that I think this is maybe the best epic fantasy movie outside of Lord of the Rings.
I think that's a pretty bold statement. I think it's important to remember that Miyazaki really likes jazz music. So we should maybe take half a second to give our listeners all that jazz.
Oh, yes. Thank you. I was wondering where you were going with that, because
beautiful.
Yes. Like the video, if you're watching us on YouTube, hit the bell, make sure you get notifications, subscribe to the channel, follow us wherever you get your podcasts, all that jazz. We really appreciate it, and it helps the channel grow.
Woo. All right. Yes. So back to that bold statement you just made, Nate.
Yes, the very bold statement that Princess Mononoke, outside of Lord of the Rings, is the best epic fantasy movie ever made. And by that extension, I think is the best.
Just keeps adding to it.
The best standalone epic fantasy movie ever made.
I think I'll give you one of the best standalone, not the best, but one of the best standalone fantasy epics ever made. Feels like tough. I feel like I don't have anything on the top of my head that I can counter with at the moment, but I'd agree with that standalone.
I mean, emphasizing the epic nature of it, because fantasy can get into all kinds of realms, like Pan's Labyrinth, or just like other Ghibli movies, like My Neighbor Totoro or Spirited Away. Like there are other, fantasy is a very broad genre, which is why I kind of emphasize the epic nature of this movie and the grand scale of the story that they're able to tell really well in an hour and 12 minutes. Excuse me, 2 hours and 12 minutes.
I was gonna say it's longer than I thought.
That would be
really, really tight script here.
Yeah.
2 hours.
But also, it is still a very tight script though for being 2 hours and 12 minutes. I think I'm gonna have to think about that a little bit, but I'm willing to say, at least like animated wise, I think that's safe to say. Just because, like you said, the scope and the scale and kind of the themes of climate change and destroying the earth and man's inherent flaws, like a lot of big ideas,
losing our connection to nature.
Movie.
What I should have read for the what this movie is about is the Rotten Tomatoes bit. Is a prince becomes involved in the struggle with a forest princess and the encroachment of mechanization. So I think that sums it up a little bit better. They're talking about losing our touch with nature in the world and why it becomes so important to save those things or keep those things around. Major theme here.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know where you wanted to really start. I mean, most of this episode is just going to be us gushing about it, but should we start with kind of the themes and how well they're laid out and kind of um, how Miyazaki kind of says what he's trying to say with this movie?
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start. I mean, this movie's 25 years old, like we already said, and not that 1997 was super early on in the fighting against climate change movement and urgency. I mean, there were for decades before that, people were bringing this up, but just how well this movie holds up and how timeless it feels.
Yeah.
Even without the themes, this just feels like a timeless story, but adding those in there and having them fit all the characters and the plot so perfectly, and just the animation style. I mean, if you're watching us on YouTube, Dylan's got his background set with the wonderfully adorable what are they, the tree
like forest sprites?
Yeah.
Basically.
And
yeah,
they're just fantastic. I love the noise they make too.
Oh yeah, the rattle when they just kind of turn their heads,
shake their heads, and like bang, bang, bang. It just goes back and forth.
Yeah, it gets me every time.
Yeah, so I mean, right away, one thing that I find very impressive is, I mean, Miyazaki's a known activist for the environment, and there's a line at the beginning of this movie where he's Ashitaka is being sent on his quest to kind of go off to the west, which is not an accident that the titans of industry are coming from the west if you're in Japan. Where the wise woman from his village tells him to go west with eyes unclouded by hate. And that to me kind of sets up all the characters in this movie, and I find incredibly impressive, because if you're making a movie with this subject matter, it's so easy to make the ones destroying the environment and killing the gods and turning them into demons. It's so easy to make them like a 1 or 2 dimensional, like cartoon level villain. Which is what we would see if this was made by Disney. I mean, there are a lot of Disney movies I really like, but they are not known for their subtlety and complex villains.
No, and the evil tycoon, who's ravaging the environment just to make a profit. I mean, that's been done a million times.
Right. It's
real Avatar vibes.
It's so easy to do that. And I feel like he wrote that line to be like read back at himself, where he wanted to challenge himself to kind of rise above and almost just use this movie as an exercise to try to view every single angle for why humanity is just destroying the environment with reckless abandon, and the impacts that that's having on all kinds of different people. And I mean, I don't think we've mentioned this yet, but this will be a spoiler review. We'll have it it is in the title of the episode and the episode description as well. But in case you missed that, this is going to be a spoiler review. We can't talk about what makes this movie great, this 25-year-old movie great, without spoiling it. So, and I mean, he does eventually introduce a less complex antagonist, just kind of which are generally the more power hungry people. But his decision to Lady Eboshi, I think, is one of the greatest female characters ever written. And she is, for me, what brings this movie up from, I have this movie as a 5 out of 5 stars. And I think she brings it I think without her, if this was like a sort of 2-dimensional kind of cackling villain destroying the environment, this would still be really good and probably a 4 for me. But I think she's what brings it up to masterpiece level, because you have that depth, and she's such a humanist. She's doing a ton of great things for the women in her community, for lepers, people who are just ostracized from society. And she's found a place for all of these people who normally would be just kicked to the curb. And to balance that with, she found a way to take care of all these people, and her way to do that is to take from the environment. So how do we balance these things? It was so impressive to me that he's able to, despite his political leanings, which for the environment I very much agree with, I just find it impressive to create what seems like the antagonist right away, and is in many ways the antagonist, but it's a complex antagonist, and one that even our main character from the beginning of the movie wants to agree with at certain points, and does agree with in many ways. But I just find that incredibly impressive, and that it's that line at the beginning of the movie for me, the eyes unclouded by hate, that I think just sets the foundation for everything that comes after it.
Yeah, I think that's what makes this powerful, in the way that we set up Ashitaka as our main character, just trying to survive and learn about the world, for lack of a better, I guess, metaphor. And then you look at Lady Eboshi, and she's the embodiment of what people are doing right now, like what this human society, human civilization is doing. We're destroying the environment to make sure that we have enough for everybody. And why is that that goal at such odds with the personal goal of Ashitaka and that sort of thing? And I think that's what makes this movie fantastic. You have to have that dichotomy.
Yeah, he humanizes her so much that she is endearing, and you do on some level like want her to succeed. You just wish there was a way for her to do it without going to war with the forest spirits and destroying the forest. And that's kind of the catch-22, kind of the heartbreaking dilemma here. And it makes it so, like you mentioned, the eyes not unclouded by hate. He meets a lot of great characters in this movie and in this forest, but a lot of those characters are clouded by hate. Even when you like them, you like Lady Eboshi, but she just like has this thing about wanting to kill the forest spirits, and she's not going to compromise on it. And then later, when you meet the forest spirit, and is it San, or who's the
San?
Yeah, she's also super cool, and you want to root for her, but then like she hates the citizens of, is it Iron City?
Irontown.
Or Irontown. I was good. Yeah. She hates Irontown.
She hates City.
So it's like, they that's their flaw, is the one thing that he was told not to do, or
Yeah, I mean, to further your point about people whose like their views can't change, like there's literally a blind god.
Oh, yeah.
Toward the end of the movie, like the older boar is like literally cannot see anymore. Yeah. And his views cannot be changed. So I like that touch at the end a lot, and at the end of it a lot, where, I mean, this movie has like 4 different parties involved or something.
I was going to say, it reminds me a lot of of Game of Thrones, where you're just getting slightly different perspectives from different groups of people. And that's what makes, I mean, that's why people fell in love with that series, is because it was nuanced. There was arguments to be made for and against each party. And that's what's going on here. You like Lady Eboshi. She's doing everything for the right reasons. She's just not doing the right thing, or in the way that you want, right?
She can't find that coexistence, which you just want to scream at the TV and say, like, will you guys figure this out? Yeah. And that's Ashitaka's whole purpose, is to sort of help bring everything together if he possibly can. But this is just so much more complex than like any other animated movie I think I've ever seen. And if anybody brings up like how animation is just for kids, I mean, show them this. This is not remotely a kids movie in any way.
I was going to say another interesting thing that I noticed on this rewatch is the character of Jigo. I believe, is it Jigo or Jigo? The helper dude, who starts off as kind of this guy on the road who he meets, so he's going to help him, and he feeds him, and he's voiced by Billy Bob Thornton. And when you meet him, it's very much like, hey, just another traveler trying to get through life. So immediately you're kind of drawn to him as like, he's a friend. But by the end, you see that he's like a mercenary willing to do pretty much anything for money, and he becomes like maybe the true, or like the most evil, quote unquote, person by the end, because he just wants to kill the forest spirit and take the head back, and like
for a good payday.
And like, so, like the nuanced nature of like Lady Eboshi and all the other characters, like even him, like he starts off as like a friend, but then you see, like, because of his motives, ends up being kind of the most vile character.
Yeah, that's where I think Miyazaki really kind of takes his shot at the end with at least the Lady Eboshi character and the types of people that she stands to represent. He's still kind of saying, like, we can talk with these people. We can reason with, we can figure something out. If these are your reasons, there's no reason why we can't eventually fix this and make it work and move forward. But if you're just in this for a payoff, then we have nothing to discuss because you clearly don't care about anything.
It was weird. I mean, I feel like I do this all the time, whether good or bad, drawing parallels to today's world. Like this movie it speaks exactly to what's going on in America at this point. It's like there's people who just don't care about those types of things, and there's people who want to bring people together and actually make shit work. And there's a lot of different levels of each of those, sides of the argument. And I think this movie, it tells you should build. You shouldn't burn bridges. You should build bridges, and you should try to include everybody, because getting all of the voice will help find the correct solution or the most right solution, if that makes sense.
Yeah, somehow it's like he nails like the scope of the story and of the setting, like Steel Town, or is it Iron Town? God dang it.
Iron Town. Third time's
Brass Town, Brassville. No, but Irontown, it's like the perfect size to just kind of represent all of just industrialization. And like no matter where you live, you can see your city in that town.
Yeah.
And he got that just right, where like that's just a stand-in for like human nature and so that's just, I feel like that's why it holds up so well, and that's why it will always be timeless, because even if we're on the moon in space cities or whatever, like Irontown will just be like, oh yeah, that's like arts, it's just such a perfect analogy that'll just, I think, hold up for a long time.
What do you guys think of the decision to not show the Emperor ever and like not really have him be much of a character, except to basically want to be a god?
I mean, I like it.
I think it makes sense in the way that I think it makes sense in the way that like there's always this overarching force that exists in your life, but and controls basically everything about your life, but you can't really do anything about. I mean, you live in feudal Japan, you live in, small town America, you live, wherever. There's always the government, or if you believe in God, there's God over you. And there's always that other thing that's keeping you where you are, doing what you're doing, that you have no control over. And you just have to go well, that's just the way it is.
Yes, there's a force outside of your control that is pushing you towards something, or causing the situation. And there's always going to be, no matter what position you're in, unless you're the Emperor. But yeah, I like that we didn't, because I feel like meeting him and having him be a character, it works better with the themes and with the story if we don't ever meet him, and he's just the faceless, all-powerful Emperor.
Works better as an idea.
That these other humans are just acting on, just being good little cogs in the machine. It's just like, ugh. I think it's more effective us not seeing him.
I agree too, and then that's part of what humanizes Lady Eboshi so much, because she is, as the story goes on, you come to find out, a little kind of ostracized and going against the grain for much of society. And that becomes more effective as the movie goes on, and you see her warring with these other tribes. We don't really know where they're from, but I kind of like how vague that is too.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like the government, it's just whoever's currently in charge. And it just further adds to his ability to just give us so many different interested parties in this story. So I also wanted to ask too, because this is a very big thing in the anime community, what little I know of it, but it sounds like we all watched the dubbed version.
Yes.
Yeah, same. But I know there are people out there that think it's just a crime against humanity it's
abhorrent
to watch a dubbed version and not do the subtitled version. But just one fun fact for me, Neil Gaiman wrote the English script for Princess Mononoke, and he's like one of my 3 or 4 favorite authors ever. So I just think that's a cool little tidbit. Dylan, I know how much you like tidbits.
We love tidbits on this show. And also, while we're talking about the dubbed version, I think it's worth saying that the voice actors that they brought in for the dubbed version is a pretty good ensemble.
Oh, it's
for any
stellar
animated movie. Let's get a little rundown here. We got we got Billy Crudup as the main character. Yeah, we have Billy Bob Thornton, Minnie Driver, Claire Danes, Jada Pinkett Smith, Gillian Anderson, Keith David. I mean,
that's Tara Strong.
Tara Strong. I mean, that's pretty good for a 1997.
So I've mentioned to you guys before that my favorite show growing up was Gargoyles.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Keith David voiced Goliath, like the main gargoyle. Mm-hmm. And so the first time I watched this movie and Keith David is the narrator at the beginning, like introducing us to the world.
We're just like, boom.
Exactly. I was just like, oh, there he is.
There it is. I'm going to love it. Yeah. I think honestly, making this movie into giving it an American version and giving it a dub version is going to make it way more accessible. Because I mean, how many regular moviegoers are going to take the time to go seek out the movie and then go also watch it in the original Japanese and then read subtitles? It's just not that many. I liked that it was in English and it was I did enjoy the movie so much. I will be going back at some point and watching it in the original Japanese, but that's going to be a few years from now. I'm sure I'll probably end up rewatching it a few times in English before I do that.
Yeah, I'd like to watch it with the original. I mean, I don't mind subtitles, and it would be interesting just to kind of see what the original take on all those characters was.
Yeah, definitely. I should watch this movie in the original Japanese at some point. But I mean, I agree with you, Adam. Like there are people I know that there's just it feels like you need to be in the right mood sometimes for a movie with subtitles.
Yeah.
And if there's a dubbed version, I should say too, I hate dubbed versions of live action movies. I cannot watch them.
Yeah.
There's something about animation though, where like the
mouth doesn't have to match.
Yes.
That's just like you can have the noise happen and you're never going to catch the same lip movement anyway. So like,
right. It's easier for me to like not look at their mouth and it's never going to match 100% anyway. So for animated movies, it doesn't bother me at all, but I just wanted to see how you guys watch the movie, because I know that's a point of contention for some people.
So speaking of the Anglicization is what it's said on IMDb. When Neil Gaiman wrote the script, well, when he wrote it for English, he got rid of or at least changed some specific Japanese terms or cultural terms. So like jibashiri and shishigami, they're changed to be more general terms, like they're a mercenary and the forest spirit, instead of being like a old cultural myth from Japan that like clearly people who are Japanese would understand. He had to change those types of those things to make it a little bit more palatable, I guess, for English speakers.
Or just so you don't feel like you have to Google something.
Yeah. And I like that somebody who has that type of power as a writer, somebody who's that good, can just take things and not change them in a way that makes it dumb or makes it bad. It just is going to just morph it just a little bit to get people to understand. I think that's what makes this movie accessible. I mean, obviously we watched it in English, but getting this movie in particular, one of the best epics, fantasy epics out there, to more people is better.
Yeah, I agree with that
for sure. One thing I wanted to just touch on real quick, not a huge point or anything, but on this time that I watched it, I realized that opening scene with that demon coming out of the forest and Ashitaka having to chase it down and just that whole, just a great opening scene. Like I had forgotten just how excellent that is, at not only just like bring everyone in and it's exciting and you get to see like a bunch of cool animation, but specifically the way they animate that demon and what you come to find out that represents. It represents like hate and how it infects him. Like just the match, like just the visual match with the theme and with like that monster is just so perfect. Like,
I put that on par with some of Disney Pixar's best work, say in Ratatouille, where like when he's tasting foods that you get, like the pops and the whizzes, and like how
visual
imaginative that
representation of
is.
the
Yeah, the visual
flavors.
representation.
Yes.
And it nails that in this movie, the visual representation of infection and hate, and how that can completely override anything else you have, and like why people act the way they do when they're scared, or it's, I mean, that's what, look at how many things we've talked about already that just we can directly relate back to. I mean, pick something. It's timeless.
Yeah. I was just saying, to bounce off of that, we haven't really talked about how amazing the animation is in this movie.
Yeah. I know, because it almost goes without saying. So I figured we'd save it for the end. But oh my god, all of the settings, the heart of the forest, like that.
Yes, like with the lake there, with the island in the middle, and like how calm it all is. And I mean, I have like multiple Princess Mononoke still images for my background on my computer. I have it as my like home image for my phone.
Mm-hmm.
It's just almost every shot of this movie is like a painting that you could just frame.
Yeah.
And also they have like a better Pride Rock in this movie.
Yeah.
With just like a better view, right? Like,
yeah.
Pride Rock looks awesome in The Lion King, super cool, looks great. But the one here, like where the wolves live, when he wakes up in the morning and looks at, oh my god.
It's like looking at like King Kong's palace. He's just way up on top and you can't be touched.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the character design is so perfect. Like is it just like, what is it called? The main spirit of the forest that you don't really meet until like halfway through.
The forest spirit?
Is it just that's just the forest spirit? Yeah. That design is like so great. Like it gets me every time, like the first time they show it. I'm always like, it makes me like chuckle and just kind of like appreciate like the artistic like vision.
The great forest spirit, maybe?
It might be the great forest, but just like the deer human face, the way it moves, like when it's walking across the water, or like that is just, it gives me goosebumps every time.
Yeah. And then just that really cool bit where its foot like kind of sinks in when it gets shot.
Yeah.
And then just kind of like gathers itself and goes right back. It's just such a cool image because I think I can't remember exactly who's floating in the water right next to it.
Mm-hmm.
But just like walking past a person, it might be Ashitaka. I'm not 100%
I think it's
sure.
Ashitaka.
I think it is too. But I just love that where it gets shot and it kind of loses its magic a little bit, and one of its feet goes actually in the water like a normal thing, and then just kind of gathers itself and takes the next step and is just right back on top again.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, he's just like floating in there. Also, I need to bring this up before I forget about it, but possibly greatest animal sidekick in animated movie history.
Ooh,
it's a bold statement.
There have been a lot of great animal sidekicks.
I did say possibly. I can't think of all of them off the top of my head right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I could. Yeah, I think it's got to be up there. I mean, his like, I don't even know what that is. That like red elk reindeer thing.
I think it's called a red elk. Is that what they? But yeah,
it might be. I think that somebody does name it. I think Billy Bob does at one point. Say, like, I haven't seen one of those except for
trying to find a picture with a tag or a tag on it. Tell me what the called,
but yeah, no, that like super awesome. Like who wouldn't want one of those as a little like pet / partner?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a lot of cool creatures like the big wolves.
Oh,
they're like dire wolves, like before Game of Thrones.
And how they designed the monkeys. I love them. There's like their beady little red eyes throwing things from trees.
Yes, and like the group think, like the monkeys all speak as one kind of, and they like
they're like,
and how they definitely want war and bloodshed, which is totally like our primate nature. Like it's all just. Every character and like the conversations they have, it all means something. It all goes back to like what he's trying to say, which we've talked about on this podcast before. Just when everything is connected and you feel like every little detail matters, it just makes it so much fun.
And it doesn't beat you over the head with like everything that these characters mean. Like as you're watching, you're just like, okay, this is a very good movie. I'm very interested. And as you go along, I feel like you can just it just happens to come to you. It's not saying like this represents this and this represents this. Now here's the movie. It's like all of these characters exist and you will understand what I meant to do for each of these characters, what they all meant to stand for, without having to do too much work, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it doesn't dumb itself down for its audience, which again just goes back to kind of the expectation of what people have for an animated movie. Where this is, I mean, don't get me wrong, if you're like 11 and you watch this for the first time, it's going to blow your mind. But there's going to be some stuff you don't quite pick up on because like the themes and the structure here and the depth of the characters are all, it's very adult.
No, yeah, for sure. And yeah, Ashitaki, just a great protagonist, like just perfectly kind of in the middle of all these other flawed characters. And he's just like, it's just from a storytelling perspective, like I just really appreciated like what a just good protagonist he is and some of his like finer moments. The definite iconic line about how he's trying to get the villagers to stop fighting and he like holds up his hand and he's like, this is what hate does. It's literally eating me alive. Like, oh, that's, I mean, come on. That's like Brando and On the Waterfront. Like,
yeah, the scene in that like iconic scene where Princess Mononoke like attacks Irontown and fights Lady Eboshi and he's like holding them.
Yep.
Like between,
yeah. And then he picks her up and is just like, we're leaving, and basically is like, who's gonna get in my way, and then pushes the door open that no one else
after he gets shot.
Yeah. That's just great, just fantastic. I really enjoyed rewatching this.
Same. I think, Adam, this is the first time you watched this, right?
It was. And I got to say, it threw me for a loop because I've obviously seen a bunch of stuff about this movie, or I've at least seen like the poster, the cover for it a million times, and thought that the main character was Princess Mononoke and the wolf that she's with. And then the movie starts and it's Ashitaka. And I was like, oh, this is completely different. I have no idea what I'm walking into. It's completely out of my element. So like for the last, however long, 10 years that I've been, I should watch that. Just seeing the cover and being like, all right, well, it's about some like some native looking person like in skins and teeth and stuff. Like, all right, well, they're doing that stuff. I don't know. And then to walk in and be completely turned on its head and then get this movie and be like, wow, that was so much better than I expected. Like,
yeah, it is. To your point, Adam, I remember the first time I saw it thinking it was a little strange because you go in thinking it's going to be about Princess Mononoke. So the first person you meet, you're like, oh, that's not Princess Mononoke. That's Yashitake. And then the second big character you meet is Lady Eboshi. And you're like, oh, that's not Princess Mononoke. No. And you're like, where's Princess Mononoke?
She's dressed like a warrior. I was expecting
I was told there'd be a Princess Mononoke. Yeah. Am I in the right
structure? And it doesn't do that.
The way that he meets her for the first time, though, when she just like is with those wolves and just spits blood out of her mouth.
Yeah.
Oh, badass.
Badass.
He's just like, what the hell?
Yeah. Who is this?
And then I mean, I guess we don't usually give star ratings at the end of these, but just for the record, I have it as a 4.5, and Adam, yours
do I.
The same. Okay, yeah,
and I've got it as a 5.
Okay, yeah, so definitely we all agree it's a fantastic movie. Was there anything else besides anything else we wanted to say on this 25th anniversary little special shout out episode to Princess Mononoke?
I don't have anything else right now. I'm sure I'll think of stuff that I forgot to mention as the days go by after recording this. I mean, there are countless great things about this movie. I'm sure there's stuff we left out or forgot to mention. And if there are, and you love this movie too, then hit us up in the comments. Let us know what you love about it. It is currently on HBO Max, along with every Ghibli movie except for Grave of the Fireflies. So they got a whole catalog out there for people to explore. Highly recommend going to check this one out.
Studio Ghibli. They have a special category. You can go into categories and find just Ghibli movies and scroll through all of them.
Their hub, I think, is what they call it.
Yeah. This movie's got to be watched to be loved. And once you see it, you're never gonna not want to watch it. It's a timeless classic. It's definitely deserving of its fame, and its 25-year anniversary.
For sure. And even if, if you watch this whole episode and you've never seen it, even if we did spoil some things, it's honestly still worth checking out.
We didn't even spoil that much stuff, honestly.
We really didn't. Like, yeah, you're going to be fine. All right. Whose turn is it to put a wrap on the show?
I've got it.
All right, Adam, take it away.
Life is suffering. It is hard. The world is cursed, but still you find reasons to keep living.